Thank you. I would like to invite our panelists to come to the front. My friend Alden, after your WhatsApp. Good. Hello, friends. Welcome again to the Panda Hub. And look, what a good combination. We are in the Panda Hub. We will discuss civil society engagement, and we will be focused mostly in our road to COP30. And why I am saying that it is a fantastic combination? Because, yes, one more chair? Okay, good. Because look, my first experience with a strong civil society engagement when it is about multilateral process, it was in Rio 92. I used to be a young guy, no more that. And I remember that I went to Rio 92 when I was 30 years old. And I remember well my experience in Rio in Parque Flamingo and how active civil society was at that time, how much energy I felt. Let me say, and it is not because I am just will moderate this session, that for me, that dynamic energized me for many, many, many years. Because we used to have Flamingo Park, civil society, in front of this beautiful hotel in Rio. And then we used to have Rio Centro with negotiators discussing what then, fortunately, was all the Rio conventions plus the Rio Declaration. So when it is about public participation and multilateral process, it is key and instrumental. Let me say that it is not only because of what I had in Rio, but also what we had in Lima in the COP20, when we organized the COP20 and we were seeking and looking how can we bring more closer different non-state actors or non-party stakeholders into the table. And that is the time in which, with the support of my good friend Alden, that it was friend of the presidency at that time, we decided to launch the Lima Paris Action Agenda. And we organized for the first time ever the Action Day. It was a fantastic single day that then it was took by the French and they organized more than a week. And also they created the figure of the champions of the Action Agenda. Then the name changed into the Marrakesh Partnership, but that started in 2014. But now we are entering into difficult times. We know how difficult because of geopolitical situation, because of the result of some elections, because of the economic difficulties of many countries, how much difficult this climate debate is becoming. So the point is what we must do to separate negotiators to civil society or to strengthen the engagement. I am more leaning to the second, but that is what it will be this panel, to discuss how can we strengthen the engagement in between civil society participation and the host country of a COP, that in this case it will be Brazil. So I am a believer that in a time in which we have to bring some new mandate for negotiators, in a time in which we have to showcase how much action we are developing, in a time in which we have to communicate to our partners, to our people, to our citizens in our countries, where we are, in a time in which we have to translate what it is happening here in the global arena and translate it into the domestic in a very simple way, because it is not to talk with them about NCQGs or NDCs because they don't care and they won't understand. It is so important, the civil society engagement. That is the role that we can play and we must play when it is about of moving this process towards success. And let me finish by talking a bit about Brazil. Brazil. You have a so important, you have how can I say, you have to play so important role. You have many, many things to do in Brazil. In some way, because I am using the analogy that the climate debate, it is entering into time of climate talks pandemics, because many viruses are attacking the process. And the point it is that we have to identify the vaccine for those pandemics. And Brazil must be the place in which that vaccine it is well developed. For what? To build back better, to move the process toward the next 4 years until 2030, and to celebrate in 2030 that we have achieved what we had expected would be this process. So the responsibility of Brazil, it is so huge. But Brazil won't be alone. Brazil will work with civil society, will work with business sector, will work with indigenous people in developing that. I can't imagine how difficult it will be for Brazil to host us with these numbers of people. But I think that it is the only way. It is by keeping this public participation, despite of the critics. Let me finish by saying I am fully against of this Club of Rome statement in the beginning of this COP, because it is not about to reduce COP or to split COPs or to, I don't know, or to see how can I do to avoid to have some actors into the table. This is a whole of society process, and we have to keep this whole of society process alive, because it is the only way to move our action forward. So, having said that, let me introduce our panelists, and I will do it one by one, and then I will move into the question. So we do have somebody from the high-level champions working in engaging civil society, Daniela Lerario. Also, we have Alden Meyer, who is from the Climate Action Network. We know how instrumental the Climate Action Network it is. Every day when we walk into this venue, we receive the echo. No? It is something that you have to read every day early in the morning, because it is a good summary on what it has just happened the day before. So thank you, Alden, for being here. We have Alice Amorim, Chief Advisor at the Special Secretary for COP30 from the Brazilian Environment Ministry. We have Sara Pereira, COP30 People Summit Representative. And we have Alberto Kleiman, Director for Institutional Relations at the Extraordinary Secretary for COP30 from the Brazilian Presidency. I guess that extraordinary means like powerful. So let's start. Let me go into my questions. Sorry for that. Okay, here it is. So Daniela, you have developed a great experience in engaging global civil society in climate talks. You know how important the action agenda is. You know how important the figure of the champion is. So how can we use the action agenda as a way to engage more civil society organizations into COPs? Because the action agenda, it is working so well in guiding us into the economic process, no? And to defining sectorial transformation through the campaigns Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, and sectorial breakthroughs. But what else we can do to engage civil society, to engage with the people mostly on the ground?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Daniela Lerario. I'm from Brazil, working for the Climate Champions team for Her Excellency Razana Mubarak, COP28 high-level champion, and Nigara Pradarai, COP29 high-level champion, and we'll be collaborating with the future high-level champion from Brazil soon. So as Manuel was saying, we thank to the seeds that were planted in the Lima Paris to the action agenda that we see today. There's a lot going on. Basically, we celebrate commitments that come from past COPs while we had the Climate Champions team. So this is 4 years ago. So we're a brand new team collaborating on that. So from COP 26, 27, 28, 29, there are a lot of things that we're delivering already. And there has been a lot of efforts into bringing the civil society into that. Obviously, I think that one important thing to mention is the mandate that the high-level champions work on is the Marrakesh Partnership, right? So the Marrakesh Partnership is this high-ambition forum, a platform of non-state initiatives and coalitions contributing to the UNFCCC process by connecting with real economy and stakeholders. Important to understand, we work with non-state actors. We collaborate what we call the ambition loop, which is basically capturing all the delivery and action and showing to the negotiations so that we can hopefully have more ambition and more implementation also with the NDCs and also NBSAPs, etc. Right? And then we do have those collaboration efforts, and we work on mobilizing, so the two campaigns that Manuel mentioned, Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, also the 2030 Climate Solutions, which we just launched a regionalization of that. Transforming systems, bridging party and non-party stakeholders, regionalizing our work, and communicating. We need to build a strategy. We did do a synthesis consultation process this year in June with the Marrakesh Partnership and with the high-level champions that brought to us, I think, one important message, which is overarching themes on enhancing collaboration between party and non-party stakeholders, leading to a stronger implementation of the Paris Agreement. About 30 parties clearly mentioned we must ensure inclusivity, particularly for underrepresented groups. So I think that this is already what the mandate and what the parties and the Marrakesh Partnership is asking from us is how do we make sure that we make this more inclusive? And we do think that Brazil is a very good opportunity for that. What I wanted to share with you, and we have a lot of achievements in many sectors and in many ways that I'm happy to let you know, but I think some main messages. So I think that leadership requires alignment and action, and we need an integrated climate agenda, right? So regional and local to the world. So the action agenda should align with the presidential agenda, obviously, so we can support the negotiations and the implementation of the GST outcomes to the Paris Agreement. So the more aligned we are with this climate agenda, the better. The sooner Brazil has the priorities, the easier it is for us to also collaborate with continuity of what has been happening in the previous COPs and in the previous process. And also trying to integrate civil society more broadly into those conversations. And then build back better, right, Manuel, what you just mentioned. So without the support from non-state actors, political declarations won't be implemented, right? So we need to understand that. We need to show more signals of change, so monitoring and showing progress and tracking will help us build trust. Nothing will happen if we don't have trust. And this is domestic on the ground, but also in the region, as Latin America and the Caribbean has a build opportunity, but in the world, right? We need to show what's happening in the region for the world in this window of 2 years. Obviously, we're talking about the need of continuity and radical collaboration and strong communication to repeat those messages. But mainly for Latin America and the Caribbean, this is a development agenda, right? So the development agenda that is resilient to climate change is the one that we need to bring to our region, from our region to the world. So the just transition, building resilience in mitigation and adaptation will be extremely necessary. Just to close, COP is not an end. It's part of a long process and will continue as part of a long process. So we need to take advantage and historical leadership of the integration of the G20, of the 3 Rio synergies that has a lot of leadership from the region, from Colombia as well, and the BRICS Plus next year for Brazil. COP is also not Brazilian. It's hard for us to understand that, but we need to play a role in remembering that we are here in the region for the world, so the discussions need to be for all of us. And hopefully we can give all the support to lead by example and to bring those conversations to the civil society and to bridge those topics towards a very impactful COP30 in Belém. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. It is true, this is not just about Brazil, it is about Latin America. And sometimes we are forgetting the strong role that Latin America has played in the climate debate. Argentina in the beginning, then Mexico with Cancun, then Lima with COP20, then Chile, and now Brazil, and Colombia with COP16 for biodiversity. And it's so interesting because we are so fragmented as a region. But sometimes we have to be proud of our diversity. And that is how we can build upon of our history of being relevant of this debate to raise our voice and to be stronger. So Alden, you are from CAN, Climate Action Network. And when it is about civil society, I can give this, yeah. When it is about civil society, it is about a collective voice, not a fragmented voice. And I know how difficult it is to promote and to produce and to develop a collective voice when it is about a climate debate in which different groups are focusing in many, many different topics. So how CAN is dealing with that in promoting a collective voice, and how strong and how loud that collective voice must be towards COP30 in Brazil?
Well, thank you very much, Manuel, and thank you, WWF, for putting this together. You mentioned the Rio Earth Summit. I was there. I've been involved in this process since the negotiations over Rio, actually the negotiations over the IPCC. And I arrived in Rio, and one of my first events was going to a WWF reception on Copacabana Beach, and that was the time I had my first caipirinha. And they were very tasty, and I had 4 or 5 caipirinhas without realizing what I was doing, and that was the start to my Earth Summit experience. I was an advisor there to Senators Gore, John Kerry, and Tim Wirth, who were coming in and trying to figure out how they should react to George H.W. Bush, the first President Bush, who famously said he would not accept any mandatory elements of the Rio Treaty because the American way of life was not negotiable. So that was a fun time, and I met with Vice President Gore a week ago Monday, and we had a great conversation about that as well as what he's doing here. But let me answer your question. I mean, we are shifting now from a negotiations space over the last almost 30 years, completed with Paris, and here we'll see if we finish up the last bits of negotiation over the Article 6 elements of Paris, but we're basically done with negotiations. We have the framework, we have the Loss and Damage Fund, we have the Just Transition Work Program, Mitigation Work Program. We've got to make them work. Like the Nike shoe company says, just do it. You know, we have to roll up our sleeves and get into implementation. And I think we have to see COP30 in Belém as kind of the alignment, collaboration, and implementation COP, the ASI COP. Because we have to shift our whole mode of thinking, our whole culture about this. I've often said that the Race to Zero, the Climate Champions, the Americas Partnership, it's a culture of collaboration, of learning by doing, of supporting each other, of radical thinking, as opposed to the negotiating space, which is a space of zero-sum politics, finger pointing, saying your end of the lifeboat is sinking, without realizing we're all in the same boat. So we need to change the culture of this process. We also know we're going to get to Belém, and we will have all of the NDCs. The next round of NDCs will have been tabled. I can already predict with some certainty that they will not add up collectively to enough to close the implementation gap and to put 1.5C within reach. So what do we do about it? We can do 2 things. We can say, oh, that's too bad. We're on track for 2.3 or 2.5 or whatever the synthesis report says the NDCs add up to. It was a nice planet. Well, we had it. Let's go back and drink some more caipirinhas. That would be one approach. Second approach is roll up our sleeves and say we're not done yet. The NDCs are the floor, but they are not the ceiling. And we need Brazil to help supercharge 3 components of an action agenda. One is finance, building on whatever number we get out of here in the next few days. We need to build on top of that because we also know the number that we come up with here for the NCQG is not going to be adequate. So what can we do to supercharge that with the Task Force on Global Solidarity Levies, with fossil fuel subsidy reform and shifting over to people-centered needs, with reform of the World Bank and the International Finance Reform Agenda? Brazil's been doing tremendous work on that, and there were a lot of elements in that G20 summary that came out yesterday that show that we can build on. Second pillar is the sectoral strategies. We've had all these sectoral initiatives launched since Glasgow on power, on vehicles, on forests, on methane. They're all wonderful, but they're not coordinated. They're not integrated. Many of them don't have accountability regimes, tracking implementation, secretariats. We need to strengthen and supercharge those because that's where the implementation is. It's in the sectors, it's on the ground. And the third part builds on what Daniela said about the climate champions. It's the subnational actors. How do we get the states, the cities, the provinces, the businesses, the investors even more engaged in this? How do we get national governments putting policies in place which help them raise their level of ambition? If we do those three things, we can overachieve what countries have put forward in their NDCs, and they can increase their NDCs before 2030, which is when the next round is done. So that's our agenda. It's finance for implementation, for decarbonization, for resilience. It's justice, because this is part of it, bringing indigenous people, bringing women and gender, bringing all elements of society along, because as the saying goes, to change everything, it takes everyone. And if we're going to transform the planet and achieve our goals, we have to engage everyone. And the third is participation, transparency, engagement. And as you know, CAN has been a long time fighter for that, to preserve our ability to have a role in this process.
Thank you. Thank you, Alden. So our voice must be louder to implement, to continue raising ambition, to mobilize resources, to coordinate and to bring subnational government, because it is true, you are from the USA, and it was because that we are still in campaign, among some others, that made us able to sort one political difficulties during that time since 2016.
Yeah, let me just say, I was in Marrakesh when I woke up on the Wednesday morning of the first week and found out that unexpectedly Donald Trump had beat Hillary Clinton. That was the beginning of the We Are Still In movement, which energized the subnationals and kept the U.S. in the game on domestic emissions reduction. Unfortunately, not on finance. We couldn't replace the federal government in finance. When Biden was elected, we changed it to America is all in, and now unfortunately it looks in about 2 months we're going to have to change it back to we are still in, because we will not likely have the federal government all in on the way they should be. And that's unfortunate.
Thank you, Alden. It could be folks, we are back. That could be the title. So, Alice, you are from the Environment Ministry. So how are you preparing the COP30, and how are you planning to strengthen the engagement with civil society? Which kind of dialogues, which kind of tools? I don't know. Yeah, I think that's for yeah.
Give her both mics. Stereo.
Wow. Thank you so much, Manuel. Thanks to WWF for inviting, and it's great to be among friends and new faces as well. Well, I wanted to come back on the Echo 92 or Rio 92 because I was also there, and I was.
You were 4 years old.
But you was a kid.
I was a kid. I was a kid. Actually, my school was like 100 meters from from the Praia do Flamengo. So
and
the
what is
Flamengo
the name
beach.
of that hotel in front of Flamingo?
The
Gloria.
Gloria.
No? Gloria.
Hotel
Yeah.
Gloria, yeah.
Gloria.
So, and my experience from 92 was completely different on that, and in the sense that it was the first time I ever heard about recycling. It was the first time I heard about vegetarianism. It was the first time I thought about sustainability. And it was interesting to see how much of that experience and the same fact that it was Rio bringing that flavor, that spirit, that openness to the discussions has influenced my whole life and why I'm actually here, sitting here and working and fighting for this. So when I start to think about Belém, I start to think about how will the kids of today will see Belém in 30 years' time? How is this vision? We always start to think of this is Paris plus 10. This is, always try to look at backwards. But what if we start looking at this forward and not necessarily looking at the COP as a negotiation process alone, as Alden was saying, but actually as a new step or new moment of deeper transformation in our realities, in the way we think about development. Because in the end of the day, when we think about what can Brazil bring to this table, what can Latin America also bring to this table, is a new way of thinking about development. And this is something that is not linear. This is not something that will come just in one plan on one paragraph or one new agenda item. This is something that will need to bring some coherence, integration, as you were saying, alignment, but also coherence that goes from the very local level to the global level.
that goes from one sector, different value chains. And it's this translating this multi-layer or this multi-stakeholder way of looking into implementation is part of this COP30 spirit that we need to bring forward. How we're going to do it? That's something that at the Ministry of Environment, what we are thinking is we need to make sure that we have three main pillars aligned and working together: the negotiation track, the mobilization track, and the action agenda. For those who are looking into this or working on this for a long time, we see those linkages. But for everybody that it's out there, this is not clear. And we need to make that work, to strengthen that. How we're going to do this? This is a lot about the alignment between the presidency, which we hope we're going to know sooner rather than later, and that will make a huge difference in how we unfold that. This is on how the participatory process at the COP, and this is not about the 2 weeks of the COP, it's about the day after this COP ends, the COP30 already started. And we need to make sure those voices, those different spaces that go way beyond Belém or the, let's say, the agenda setting, actually can contribute to a very powerful result at COP30. I think there is a challenge for Brazil and Brazilians to actually balance, in a way, what is the Brazilian spirit of the COP and what is a larger global south or Latin American spirit of the COP, to bring that in. I think to say something very concrete and very specific, one of the things that we are working on is to make sure that the regional climate weeks are back and that we use that as a space, for instance, to go deeper in discussing NDC implementation, what are the gaps, what are the adaptation components that we know that are very dear to the region and they're not actually well reflected in the discussions here. We need to bring adaptation and mitigation in an equivalent level. And we need to unpack the just transition component. This is something very important for COP30 in a sense, because just transition brings a lot of concepts, ideas, but it has to work in practice. So we need to make sure, and this is something in the spirit that we are bringing, and we want to hear as many voices as possible. So we are still in COP29. We need to focus here on getting the most ambitious outcome on NCQG, on GGA, on in the implementation on paragraph 28, 34, the GST. But we are here to start. We can't wait until the COP to start listening. And I'm here to, all ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. You have to unpack the just transition and you have to unpack the boxes of cachaça also. So important. And no, it is true, two important things. So, as a Buzz Lightyear phrase, it is to Belém and beyond. No? And it is good to identify these three tracks, because sometimes we don't know how to navigate a COP. But it is true, there are different tracks. And each track counts. That is so important. So it is good to have the ministry thinking on that way. So Sarah, you know that it was in, do you need, yes. You have your headphone. Also, it was in Lima in the COP20 when we convened indigenous peoples into what it was called the indigenous Maloca. No? And it was the beginning of a process of engagement with indigenous peoples. Soon, now we will have the Brazilian People's Summit. So the point is, what can we expect of that Brazilian People's Summit and how instrumental it will be to strengthen the potential outcomes of COP30?
Obrigada, Manuel. Boa tarde. Obrigada, WWF, pelo convite. Eu sou Sara Pereira, venho do Brasil, de Belém do Pará, que será a sede da COP30. Vamos receber vocês com muita cachaça de jambu, mas também com muito açaí, com muito tacacá, com muita farinha e com muitas articulações da Cúpula dos Povos. A Cúpula dos Povos é essa articulação da sociedade civil global, que não inicia em Belém, ao contrário, né? É também histórico, é um processo histórico da sociedade civil do mundo, que se mobiliza em torno da pauta climática. E em Belém a cúpula dos povos, então, volta com essa força da mobilização da sociedade civil, não só brasileira, mas também da América Latina e do mundo, não é? Trazendo essas diversas vozes dos inúmeros territórios que já sentem os danos da crise climática. Eu particularmente venho da região de Belém do Pará, no estado do Pará, na Amazônia brasileira, os povos ribeirinhos, populações indígenas, comunidades tradicionais sofrem com uma seca severa que vem se agravando a cada ano. E imaginem para os povos amazônicos que a água é um elemento central da sua vida. Então, imaginem comunidades inteiras sem acesso à água, sem poder navegar, sem poder se abastecer, sem poder viver em condições dignas. Então, não é possível pensar numa COP30 que não seja pautada, que a discussão da pauta climática não seja pautada na justiça climática. Não haverá transição justa enquanto não houver direitos garantidos aos povos tradicionais, aos povos que estão nos territórios, aos verdadeiros guardiões e guardiãs da floresta. Não haverá justiça climática enquanto nós tivermos populações que vivem essencialmente da água sem ter água para beber. Então, é preciso que a discussão que é feita nas COPs tenha esse olhar para a realidade. E é esse olhar para a realidade plural, diverso, complexo, que a cúpula dos povos quer trazer. Com essas vozes amplificadas, potentes, não só cobrando dos governos, não só cobrando dos negociadores responsabilidades concretas para enfrentar a crise climática, como também demonstrando para o mundo que estará em Belém que esses territórios têm soluções reais para a crise climática. Esses territórios manejam a floresta, manejam as águas de forma equilibrada e a população amazônica tem muito o que dizer para o mundo, tem muito o que demonstrar para o mundo. É importante, então, trazer essa mensagem que a Cúpula dos Povos quer evidenciar, que com a mobilização, com a articulação, com a pressão da sociedade civil, a gente quer também exigir dos países membros, dos negociadores, que ouçam as vozes da Cúpula dos Povos, porque esses povos articulados sabem o que dizer, têm o que dizer e vão dizer na COP30 em Belém do Pará.
Muito obrigado, Sara. It's so interesting. In Cali COP16, the indigenous peoples got its recognition as a subsidiary body. That's fantastic. I think that is something that it has been so celebrated. So we know that in the climate debate, we still have room to continue bringing indigenous peoples into this table for having them raising their own voice and to contribute to this climate debate. So thank you, Sara, for your remarks. So now, Alberto, you are in charge of institutional relations, so difficult for the COP30. And that is related to different institutions at different levels for different purposes. And also it is related to this idea of green zone, blue zone. The green zone, sometimes people criticize green zone, but the green zone was created because of the fact that many people were looking, I do want to be part of the COP. I remember in Lima, I got some voices saying, Manuel, how can I get a ticket to go to the COP? No, that was the idea, no, a ticket to go to some place to listen. But we know how the COP it is used to being organized. That is why at that time Voices for Climate was organized. And now we have the green zone and blue zone. What Brazil is preparing to receive so many people from different places, engage civil society, and connect with institutions?
Well, thank you, Manuel. Thank you, the organizers, for the invitation. Starting from your question and amplifying to get the title of the event, how to engage civil society and beyond, or how to engage non-state actors as a whole, that's one of the challenges we have. I think Green Zone is a creation, and I think we understanding from SECOP, from the special or extraordinary secretariat for COP30, we're extraordinary because we're going to finish at the end of the COP, not because we're really special, yeah. That's just to clarify this, yeah. We like to, I prefer the special into English to translate into special secretariat because it was created to dedicate, I mean, the preparations for the COP, yeah. So we're a small team going bigger. We came here to see how the Azerbaijanis are organizing, yeah, the event. But is important just giving you a hint of how we organize in the federal government, yeah. The three main leaders of the organizations is the presidency, yeah. We are in the presidential office, yeah, Casa Civil we call it, the special secretariat, our colleagues from the Ministry of Environment, yeah, my friend Alicia here, and our colleagues from Foreign Affairs, yeah. So engaging all the agencies and the ministries of federal government, we form the preparations for the COP in different fronts, yeah. So in the presidency, we are responsible for the preparations, and it involves as well the institutional relations and partnerships. So I'm responsible for also the partnerships and how to engage these non-state actors in the preparations. So there's a lot of things to do in terms of sharing the costs, for example, yeah? So we are willing to do, but also programmatically, how we want to bring all the voices and open the spaces and make available spaces, enable the spaces of the COP, being the blue zone, the green zone. One point that I want to highlight here is that President Lula gave the motto of the COP30, which is this COP should be the people's COP, yeah, having the human being the center, and everything is going to be around this message, that strong message. So it's very much aligned with, we won't create any, let's say, bureaucratic or geographic limitation for the engagement of civil society. That's an important message I wanted to bring here. It's the opposite. How, for example, how to optimize the spaces already created in previous COPs into a better participation of the general public, for example, the local public of Belém, of the city of Belém, yeah, or the people from the Amazon that are come to the COP, let's to get a ticket, yeah. This ticket idea is I think it's an expression of I want to be part of it, and this is an energy we need to know how to channel. So this is a challenge posed, but it's, I mean, the mission is clear, yeah, we need to do this. So I like the idea of making a green zone more creative, more inclusive, putting together, bringing the business, because sometimes we see business with a little bit of prejudice. I mean, I think there's space for all, and I like the idea of bringing small business like solutions providers. Yeah, what's happening in terms of in developing countries or startups that work with sustainable issues? Yeah, what's going on in this field? It's possible to open this space in the green zone for them. I believe yes. I think the green zone has also a role that can be played in a more visible way in education. Yeah, this is a kind of like immaterial legacy. Yeah. We're also responsible for the material legacy, what we're going to leave for the city of Belém, yeah, in terms of works. That's 6 billion reais now invested already in Belém, yeah. But the material, the Alice story, I think is great. I mean, I remember Rio 20, Rio plus 20, no, before that, yeah. So Rio Echo, or I was in the Rio plus 20 as well, but I remember understanding recycling. So this is a strong message, and we're talking about this immaterial legacy of living for the new generations. Well, my son, for example, talks a lot about climate change, and I'm feeling already some anxiety on climate change, yeah? So how to address this in COP30? I think it's something that we want to address as well. And finally, bringing all the other ones. I mean, civil society is very strong and very powerful in this conversation, but it was already mentioned subnational governments, yeah, states, and just to finalize here, to finish, I like very much the idea of thinking the COP beyond the COP, thinking the COP beyond Belém. So how we can go outside the walls of the COP, understanding that the COP is not only happening in Berlin, it's happening in the Amazon. So how to engage the states of the Amazon in the COP, not necessarily physically, not presential. Yeah, how we can, with technology, with digital platforms, bring in mayors all over the country, the territory, the Brazilian territory, to participate. So thinking outside the box with digital help and technology and engaging everybody and being Belém, not necessarily face-to-face, but also virtually. So that's a challenge, and we want to face it and want to address it, and we count on your support and participation. Thank you.
Well, if we want to promote tickets for COP30, I think we should recruit Taylor Swift.
That's fully true. Thank you. Thank you, Alberto. No limitation for civil society. That has been so important to be listened. Thank you for saying that. And one more thing. It is true that sometimes we forget how important it is to coordinate within agencies. It is not easy. Some days ago, we were talking on what happened in Copenhagen, that it was the same in Warsaw COP19, in which there were some discrepancies in between public agencies in the middle of the COP. So the unity is so important, and by coordinating, you can keep that unity. So we will have 10 minutes for a Q&A. Before of that, Alice, it is true that Rio was probably that place in which we started this civil society participation based on the willingness of Brazil to organize the Rio 92 UNCED, no? That was the title, in that way, but also because of a very strong Latin American woman, Yolanda Cacabatze, no? That she was in charge of organizing that civil society engagement with the UN. Probably it was the UN Secretary General, I don't remember, and she did so great. So again, the power of Latin America. So friends, we will open for 10 minutes for Q&A. Who do want to take the floor? Please identify yourself, and if you want to guide your question to some of the panelists, tell us to whom. Don't be shy, this is Brazil. In Brazil, nobody's shy. Everybody's like active and dancing samba. Please, go ahead. Aha, here. Identify yourself, please.
Elchin Sardarov, WWF COP29 Communication Coordinator. First of all, welcome to Azerbaijan. I would like to ask you your expectation from COP29 in Azerbaijan, and also what you will take with you from Baku to Brazil in context of climate changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, and then Sergio.
Yes, I'm Sergio Teixeira from Capital Reset, a website in Brazil. My question is, could we have a little bit of an idea? I know this hasn't been announced yet, but any ideas about what's the action agenda is going to be like in Brazil?
Thank you. A third question, and then we will go back to here. Dana.
Thank you. I'm Leticia. I'm from Malana Institute from Brazil. We work to promote and guarantee children's rights. So we have a children delegation here this year. So I would like to see what are your thoughts thinking about this COP to COP legacies, because last year we have a strong agenda on education, but I don't know here as much as we know. We didn't move forward considering this agenda, so I would like to see your thoughts on these legacies considering the Troika as well.
Just a quick question. I'd like to ask Sarah to expand a little bit.
Please identify yourself.
Huh?
Identify yourself. Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Tatiana from WWF Brazil, and I wanted to ask Sarah to expand a little bit more on what are the plans to the People's Summit in Brazil.
Okay, who do you want to start? It's open.
First question, maybe. Let me start with a question about COP29 and what we need out of here. I mean, obviously, I could go through the whole list of NCQG and MWP and this and that. I'm not going to do that. What we need out of here is a signal to the world that this process is fit for purpose, that governments can still collaborate against the major emergency that threatens humanity, and ecosystems, that we can rise above our differences, rise above our conflicts, and do what our people expect us to do. That's the biggest signal we need out of here, that this process can deliver, that governments can collaborate, that leaders can lead. And if we don't get that signal, there's going to be increasing doubts about this whole process, no matter what Brazil does in Belém. So I think we have to deliver what we can here and then fight for more.
Fully endorse what Alden just said, and I would add that COP29, it's being extremely well organized, actually. I wanted to congratulate publicly on how all the atmosphere is being very easy to walk around. So the organizing factor actually raised the bar for us. So I think this is something that we are definitely thinking of, right? Yeah, the volunteers are so, yeah, no, it makes you feel welcome. So congratulations on that. In terms of the action agenda, we, of course, need to still wait until the presidency and the champion are announced in Brazil. But one thing is clear, that we don't want to actually bring new elements or, let's say, open a whole Christmas tree of new initiatives. We want to make sure we have the coherence from what's already there and make sure that we deliver. So we are very focused on implementation. We are very focused on bringing the synergies, I would say, from the different conventions and from the different agendas that are already there.
Just quickly, because I don't want to extend, and I think our colleagues have more to say, but just also to congratulate and join my colleague about the organization. We've been saying this from our team to the Azerbaijani team here. The level of organization is very high. I think the volunteers, again, I add myself to recognition of the incredible work. We had a meeting with them, with the organizer of the volunteers team, and we said it many times that it's very, very amazing what you did in terms of the participation, how they were critical for the welcoming feeling and practical things. So I think the bar is very high, and apparently in a kind of reasonable scale of the organization. So it was well done, well organized, everything ran very smoothly without big fireworks, which is fantastic. Like, keep it simple, keep it good, and I think you achieve it in terms of organization. So.
Sorry, I need to be 5 minutes in the other side of the venue, so I need to run. But thank you so much. You can find my phone, and please reach out if you need.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Alice. I wanted to resonate on the organization and how we feel welcome, how the city surprises us by its architecture and impeccability, but also say that Alberto was mentioning that we will try to give no restraints for participation of civil society, and by being welcome to a very organized structure of COP, we can understand the importance of the venue, right? If we're able to access and to listen to each other, everything is easier. So I think I would welcome that. And in terms of the action agenda, what I just wanted to mention is, yes, we need priorities, the sooner the better, but the priorities are not all the action agenda. Everything else is still happening. We have had presidencies before talk about their priorities. We want to integrate and we want to support the presidencies, but we will continue doing whatever it is that each one of you are doing if we look how to tell the good stories, if we know how to be able to bring in the non-state actors aligned with what the governments are doing and the continuity of the other agendas, right? So it's important, but let's not wait for it to be defined to act. I think that we need to start, from what we want to do to what we are doing, right? Like the discussions needs to, this is what we want to do, and what is it that we are doing already for a long time? That is what I think needs to be on the agenda.
Nós também agradecemos a ótima receptividade aqui do Azerbaijão, uma cidade muito linda e muito receptiva. Então, parabéns pela organização. E respondendo aqui a pergunta da Tati, né, da Tatiana, sobre o que é a Cúpula dos Povos e como a gente está se organizando, a Cúpula dos Povos vai ser uma grande assembleia, né, um grande encontro dos diversos movimentos sociais, organizações, redes, fóruns do Brasil, da América Latina, das demais partes do mundo, que vão estar debatendo durante todos os dias da COP, né, também nós vamos estar com as nossas atividades, realizando inúmeras atividades, inúmeros debates, reflexões, pontuando as críticas em relação às negociações, quando forem o caso. E, como eu já disse anteriormente, fazendo também essa apresentação do que a gente já vem fazendo, né, do que já vem sendo realizado em cada país, em cada região, trazendo e amplificando essas vozes dos diversos povos, que estão atuando diretamente em seus territórios no enfrentamento à crise climática, né? Então é importante trazer essas experiências, essas iniciativas, na verdade, né, que não são experiências, mas são iniciativas vivenciadas e comprovadas que funcionam e têm funcionado em diversos territórios. Então, a Cúpula dos Povos também vai ser essa janela onde essas iniciativas serão visibilizadas e ampliadas. E esperamos que isso sirva de inspiração, né, também para quem está dentro do espaço das negociações. A Cúpula dos Povos vai atuar, está atuando no que a gente chama de com o pé dentro e com o pé fora, né? Um pé dentro do espaço das negociações, incidindo sobre os negociadores, sobre as agendas de cada país, né, internamente, mas também a parte da discussão com os negociadores, e também com o pé fora, trazendo para a rua, trazendo para a cidade. A gente deseja e vai fazer com que Belém não seja uma espectadora da COP. A gente vai fazer com que Belém, com que a Amazônia brasileira seja protagonista da COP 30. A gente quer que a Cúpula dos Povos seja esse espaço de convergência para que efetivamente a COP 30 seja a COP do povo, para que os resultados, porque assim a gente consiga pressionar os negociadores para que as metas sejam minimamente alcançadas e a gente não vire mais uma Copa com um engodo de negociações que não levam a nada e que não traduzem a realidade, não atendem à realidade dos territórios. Então, estão todos convidados e convidadas a somar conosco na Cúpula dos Povos, rumo à COP30 em Belém do Pará.
Obrigado, Sara. So this has been a fantastic panel. I think that in some way we have transmitted the spirit of Brazil, despite that we are not Brazilian, but we have felt as Brazilians here. So the voice of a strong platform as the Marrakesh Partnership and the champions of the action agenda, the voice of this summit for people from Brazil and all what Brazil it is organizing around convening peoples into this climate debate, the voice of a ministry that it is clear that we have to work on the 3 tracks. It's the only way to engage the whole of society. The voice of this extraordinary, I will insist with the extraordinary agency from Brazil to promote good engagement within different entities in the formal side, but also in the non-formal, the green zone. And the voice of a coalition of organizations, civil society, as it is the Climate Action Network. So please join me with a big applause to these fantastic panelists. Again, muito obrigado for this opportunity and boa tarde.
You've been practicing.